Welcome everyone who is joining us today in the live, and if you're watching the replay, welcome. So today we're going to discuss about the topic of inviting God to our finances. Inviting God into our finances. Sometimes we have this idea that God and money, they're two different things that just don't get along, right? The Bible does say that you cannot serve God and money at the same time. And if you follow one, you will hate the other. So there can be a lot of conflict into this two subjects. And just to dive and just discuss this concept and just ideas around this, I asked my friend Kayla Walter, who is also a certified financial planner and also a faith walker like myself, to discuss this topic. So I'm gonna ask Miss Kayla if she can join me. Let's see. How can I add you, Miss Kayla? Is there a way? Do you know how to request? Can you request me to join? Can you request to join my live? I see that you are connected now, but I can't ask you to join. I think you need to make a request. Requests. There it is. Perfect. So, Ms. Kayla Walter, certified financial planner and also faith walker, is going to discuss and join me to discuss this. How can we invite God into our finances and just throw ideas around this concept? What does it mean? Hello.
Hey,
How are you? Thank you for joining me today.
how are you?
I am good. Yeah. Thank you again for joining me.
Of course.
Um,
I'm like, what is going on here? I know I pressed the thing like 3 times.
oh, did you really? Oh, it's okay. Well, at least you're here now, so I'm happy that that worked out.
Yes.
Hello, Bibi. How are you? Let's wave people joining right now. And yeah. Anyways, so as I was sharing, I just thought it would be really cool to talk about this, especially if you're also a certified financial planner. You are someone that is talking and helping people with their finances as well, and you're someone that has God in her life, and I'm sure that um, you see Him working as well in this area, right? As you're working with your clients, maybe. So I just thought that it would be really cool to discuss and dive into this. So I don't know. Are you ready to get started?
Of course. We got Miss Mona from SCA in the live tonight. Hey.
Yeah. Hi, Miss Mona. How are you? Hello, Vanessa. Yeah. So why don't you share with us maybe if you've had a personal story with God and money? I'll share mine too, but I'd love to hear yours as well. Or maybe someone that you've worked with where you've been able to see like a before and after of how things are with and without him.
Yeah, so my kind of like financial story, encompassing God, started like when I was a kid. So my family is like always been like really big in church. Both of my parents are in ministry. My brother's in ministry, so we've always gone to church. And so, pretty much from the beginning of time, like when I first had a job, my dad was always like, you tithe, like no matter what." So it was always just a thing in my head, and it was like, okay, I get paid, I pay my tithes, I get paid.
Mhm.
That just always stuck with me throughout when I got my first job in high school, even through college when I had like little odd jobs there. I always paid my tithes. So I was never the college student that was like, oh, I got to figure out how to make rent this week because it's like, wherever it came from, it didn't matter. I just always knew I was secure. So I've never um, had to struggle or, like barely get along or try to make ends meet because, I just always attributed that because I've always paid my tithes on time. And so, like, I always think in the back of my head, it's like, well, maybe if you paid your tithes, you'd be okay. But
Or you see someone struggling.
Yeah, that's what I think in my head. I don't actually say it out loud, but that's what I think in my
Yeah. Yeah.
head. But then, of course, got to college, um, majored in finance. Had no idea what I was going to do with that degree, but I just decided I'm going to major in finance. And when I now call like my defining moments, like divine moments, defining moments, um, was I was introduced to the lady who was over what we call the CFP program at the time. Um, and she just kind of like handed me this piece of paper and was like, "Here, join this program. By the time you finish, you'll be able to sit for this exam." I didn't really care about the exam, but she picked all of my electives for me. I mean, I went to LSU, as you can see, obviously, and it's a huge football school. So the last thing I wanted to do was take time thinking about electives just to meet these, requirements to
Requirement.
really worried about, taking my major core classes to get out of school. So started taking those classes. And it's funny because in those classes is where I really started to learn about like personal finance and all of the things that I didn't know, all of the things that I wasn't because my parents didn't know. Um, and as I'm learning them, I'm like calling home, like, "Mom, did you know this? Like about this account, this and that and the third." And they're like, "No, we didn't know." And so most people who would get all like, sad, like, "Oh, because I mean, LSU is a big PWI." And so I'm like the only little colored face in my classes. Um, and it was just like, I was like, "Man, how is it possible that all y'all's parents knew about this and mine didn't?" So instead of getting sad about it, I just got majorly pissed off. And so that's pretty much how I ended up in the real world of like financial planning and why I even pursued the CFP designation. Because it all started with just this random introduction of this woman whose favorite word is fabulous coming up to me and was like, "Here, take these classes." And I was just like, "Okay." And then it's been pretty much on that path ever since. Um, but I can say, like, even throughout like learning about finances and learning what I knew from like my parents, even growing up,
Mm-hmm.
being consistent and keeping God in your finances. My dad always says, like, it's already, like, we don't worry about things because we have faith. It's already done. You pay your tithes, you trust God, it's already done. And so that's always been like the pretty much like the mantra of my life,
Yeah.
that I do. So I don't actually like worry about like anything at this point. And so yeah, that's kind of like the story.
That's cool. Thank you for sharing because that just like as you're sharing, you've been like people have been tell your parents, you've grown with your parents telling you to invite God into your finances since you were very little. And in a way, like you pursuing this career and then this lady telling you, hey, to take these courses, it kind of proves like God's faithfulness that he's been taking care of you all throughout, and if you needed additional learning, he even provided that for you to learn the things that maybe you didn't have access to growing up. And that's just like, to me, it's just showing God's faithfulness, because throughout your whole journey you had him with you in that specific area as well,
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
For me it was for me it was completely different because I've never been taught the concept of tithing. I learned it as an adult, um, and interestingly enough, I think I learned it in the wrong way. When I learned it, I understood. I think it was just my mind. The problem wasn't the seed, but the soil,
Mhm.
right? And I just took this idea that, oh, if I pay my tithes, and just before I go further, I do believe that inviting God into our finances is more than just the tithe.
Yeah,
But right now we're just talking about this, but I think we can continue talking more about what it means to invite God in our finances. But I think the most obvious one as a Christian in particular is the concept of the tithe, right?
mhm.
Or the most basic thing that we can think of when we think about God and money, we think of the tithe.
Yeah,
But when I first was introduced to the tithe, I kind of understood, like, if I give my 10%, I will be prospered. So basically that I will become rich.
Yeah.
I will give money and then God will make me a millionaire. And so I gave faithfully my tithes. But the thing is, my heart was in the wrong place.
Mhm.
My motivation wasn't to grow his kingdom. My motivation wasn't to put him first. My motivation was, okay, let me follow this rule so that he can grant me this wish, right? Kind of like putting a coin in a wishing well,
Yeah.
sort of, right? And then everything fell through. I got into huge debt. I had no financial knowledge. I I quit my job. I ended up being with no job, with no business, with no money, losing all of my friends, and it was just a very rock bottom time for me. So I think, like, for me, the biggest lesson that I've learned with the concept of inviting God to my finances is not just about the things that we do, because God has many things to say about money.
Mhm.
Um, but it's not just about the things that you do, but where your heart is,
Yeah,
you know?
definitely.
And I think I did need to have that experience for God to change my heart and for me to see. I realized that I was idolizing money. I was pursuing money, success, you know? And I think God had to strip that away so that I put my heart in the right place. But the cool thing is, when I learned to put my heart in the right place, that's when he started providing, as you did, with the knowledge, as it happened with you with the knowledge, for example. When I said, you know what, God, I want to do things the right way, teach me, I want to serve you above anything else. If that means that I have to surrender my dreams, my whatever, I will do it. But I just want to do whatever you want me to do. And as I started walking with that intention, God showed different courses and open resources that I could access, and my finances just completely changed from there. And I was able to finally experience this promise that God says that He will provide for us. Right. Before that, I would complain, God, why are you not providing for me? You had promised me. But it was actually me doing all of the bad financial decisions, but I was blaming him, of course.
Yeah.
But when my heart came to the right place, it's like I started experiencing that. And it's just been such a cool experience to see God's hand, God opening doors and things like that. And that's why I'm so passionate about these two subjects, money and God. So anyways, that's kind of like the gist of my story with inviting God into my finances. And I mean, just for people that are watching, I think it just proves to show that when you have your heart in the right place, when you're really, you know, intentional about walking this journey with God, is God does not frown upon money. God does not frown upon, right? And he's faithful, and you see it in Kayla's testimony and in mine, and I'm sure that there's many similar testimonies like that. So, like, let's take out that idea that God and money don't go well together, or that God doesn't care about your finances, or that if you're trying to be responsible with your finances, it's against God. Like, it's not. It's two things that go well together. Your heart needs to be in the right place first.
Yeah. But I feel like, that a lot of people have this notion that you when you enter into a relationship with God, it's like this quid pro quo, like, oh, I'm gonna go to church, I'm gonna serve, I'm gonna pay my tithe, my offering, and you just gonna open the windows of heaven, rain down all kinds of gold and supernatural blessings upon me. And it's really not at all like that. It's all about really where your heart is, motivation is, and um, also to some of these people who, we see these people, they obviously have money, and they're like, oh, I gave to this person because I saw that they were in need, and da, da, da. And it's like, you didn't have to. Like, I'm glad that God has blessed you to bless somebody else, but you also don't have to, you don't have to broadcast that to the world for other people, because there is a portion in the Bible where he talks about, don't go and boast about what you do. Like, keep that between you and that person in who needed it. Um, and so, yeah, definitely keeping your heart in the right place um, is really kind of where your blessings fall. And there have been so many stories where I've heard from people, even girls in my church group, who finally just started paying tithes, and then like, the next week was automatic with like an extra 700 or something dollars just from finally like paying their tithes and making the commitment to do what was right with their money. And so yeah, it's different for everybody. He shows up, proves himself different um, financially for everybody, but you just have to stay the course and know where your heart.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. That's so important. So I have some questions here just to discuss. What does it mean to you to invite God into your finances besides the tithe? Like, do something else come into mind when you think of this concept of inviting God into your finances? How do you live that?
So for me, it's never about I would say inviting him in, but
Mm-hmm.
and it's like I never made it without him. As the Bible says, the Lord gives you power to get wealth. It all comes. So what is the point of holding back something that never belonged to me in the first place? Like he allowed me to have this skill set, have this job to that pays me money so that I can live the life that I live, but also give a small portion of it back to him to take care of his, which is the church, to continue serving the people of God and helping them and doing whatever the church does beyond just coming to church on a Sunday morning, making sure that part is taken care of, and he continues taking care of me.
Mm-hmm.
So um, it's I wouldn't say it's about like, oh, let me open it up, because it's all his. And like we serve a limit. So it's like I know as long as I keep doing what I always have been taught to do,
Mm-hmm.
um, giving from a place of service, that my house will always be taken care of as when I'm taking care of his house as well. So
That's a cool concept. That's a cool concept. Uh, my house will be taken care of as long as I make sure that I also take care of his house. Like, what was it? There was this phrase that said, yeah, I think that's what my mom used to tell me: take care of God's things, and God will take care of yours.
mhm.
So to you, it's more than inviting him to your finances. It's kind of having this awareness that it all belongs to him.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, God can do things in an instant, in the blink of an eye. The same way he dropped an extra $700 from out of nowhere into one of my sister's bank accounts from finally, trusting God, paying her guys. The same way he could open up heaven and drop like an extra 350 grand in my account just because if I needed it.
Yeah.
And not that I'm praying for that kind of blessing. However, I'm not going to turn it away either.
Right.
I'm just saying, like, he can do that.
Yeah.
I've seen many instances where people have had a need and somebody else just came out of nowhere and was like, I just felt like blessing you. And it was the exact amount that they needed to carry to, keep going or carry on or to do whatever they needed to do with that money. I mean, because, these things happen, these things can be done. You never know who God has pressed upon their heart to help you out as long as you remain faithful
Yeah.
to what he's told you to do, what he's called you to do.
Yeah. Something that I've learned just recently is that God will be faithful to provide. When your heart is in the right place, God will be faithful to provide. But that provision can take many forms. Right?
Hmm.
It can either be an open door,
Yeah.
an opportunity, a raise, sudden money, crossing your way, or maybe even stretching a dollar. You find the sale in the particular thing that you needed, and it just happens to be on sale. you
Right.
know
Right.
I know I've experienced this, and something that I just came to my heart right now is that I think what's really cool is that when you have this intentionality, like you say, that it all belongs to him, that he is with you in every single part of your life, in every single area. I remember I wanted this pair of sneakers. I really wanted a pair of sneakers. I wanted to work out, and just having a cute workout outfit was important for me to stay motivated, right? So I went to the store and I was looking for the right sneakers. I wasn't sure, and I saw a pair of sneakers and they were cute. I tried them on. They looked great. And I remember I asked God, God, should I buy this? Because I don't think I had necessarily budgeted for it, or was a tiny bit out over my budget. And I was like, should I buy this or not? Like, I'm not sure. And I went around the aisles like multiple times and just like looking at this pair of sneakers. And I just felt God telling me no. And I'm like, are you sure? Like, let me try them again because they're kind of perfect. It's like, no, these are not it. And I'm like, okay. And I just let go of it, right? And I think like it was 2 days later, my boss came from came from shopping, and she told me, hey, I was just shopping in this store. Here, I have this coupon for this store. It's this store of athleisure. Go check it out. And it was like $20 off or something like that. And I go to the store with that coupon, and I find the actual sneakers that I was looking through Pinterest. You know, when I'm looking for outfit inspirations, and there were those sneakers. And with that coupon, it was actually under the amount that I would have paid for the other pair of sneakers that were cute but weren't the ones that I like secretly desired. But I just thought they were out of my budget, and that's why I didn't even think of buying those. um and I just thought that was really cool. Like, to me, that's also a way that I really believe that God doesn't just provide our needs. He's our father too. And like any good father that likes giving good things to, his daughters, his sons, like it's the same with us. It's not just like thinking that, oh, just my basic needs, that's what God is going to cover. But everything else, my wants, like, no, that's bad, that's greedy. I shouldn't think about, like, no, that's not true. Like,
Yeah,
he cares.
yeah, definitely. Because he knows. I mean, he knows the way he makes us, and I know. I like to joke all the time. I'm like, God made me bossy and bougie, so he knows I like nice things.
Right.
Even when I was looking for a, and I was like moving out up here to the East Coast, I was like, one thing I'm not doing is I'm shoveling stuff. So I have to have a garage and I have to have storage. And I had a whole list of things that I wanted, but those two were my non-negotiables because I keep a lot of stuff in storage. I have a car. I'm not scraping snow off of it in the wintertime. So I need a garage. And so I didn't get all of the stainless steel appliances and the huge cooking tub that I wanted. I did the garage.
Mhm.
And it was in my budget of what my new salary, the salary that I asked God for, was paying me. And so it's just like little like that where you have to, even if the asking for doesn't come in the way you think, it's still a blessing for you. So yeah.
Yes, that's true. That is true. Yeah, God is not a genie in a bottle.
No, he's not.
So we should not look at him like that. He is a faithful father, and he knows what's best for us. And I think we should trust him in that area too, in
Yeah.
this area, right? Because he knows best at the end of the day. And just trust in his promises that he does say that, if we delight ourselves in him, he will give us the desires of our hearts. And
Right.
so trust that he knows best, and and he knows us better than sometimes we know ourselves.
Oh,
Sometimes we think we might want some things, but we just want them because our best friend has it, and I want to. But turns out that wasn't really what you truly longed for.
that is true. And I'm not a huge like shopper or anything. So like my friends will go shop and get shoes and clothes and like all of this stuff. And I'm not that person. Because God didn't make me that way. My guilty pleasures are, I mean, I do like a pair of nice heels, but I love purses and God knows I like purses. And so as I progressed through my purse journey from like doing work to coach, um, and now I just really love like Kate Spade purses. I'm like, every time you turn around, Kate Spade's still. I'm like, Lord, you can't keep doing this. But I like handbags, and I have nowhere to go because it's in the middle of a pandemic. It's like I have nowhere to go, but I will buy a handbag quick. And that's kind of what I spend, like what I like to spend my money on. I like nice purses. That's what I reward myself with, and I like trips, and that's also another reward for me. Like when I finished my CFP exam, I went to Jamaica because that's what I wanted to do, and God blessed me to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So not just only needs, but also like wants. And of course, you're talking like Bible. Also, God says He's the giver of all good things from above and from Him. So just as someone who is not in Christ, or is an atheist, whatever, what have you, would give the best things to their children. Like, why would we not expect that God, who loves us so much, would just give us just our basic necessities? Like, He wants you to be taken care of and be a good steward over the extra that He gives you as well.
Yeah, that's so good. And that you just said is also, I think it's also a topic that I wanted to go into, because when it comes to money, I do believe that God has a part, but we also have a part,
Oh yeah,
right? God has promised that He's going to provide for us, and that's kind of like what we've been sharing right now. But He's also called us to be exactly the word that you said, which is stewards, good stewards, right? And what was the verse? I'm not expert in reminding and remembering the Bible verses, but I think it says something like gold and silver belong to me, or something like that, right? Everything belongs to God, like you were saying. And so when we have that awareness that everything belongs to God, what you were saying, that the talents, our ability to make money, that also comes from God. And when we have that awareness that it's not our money, but it is His money, is money that we've been able to obtain through the talents that He has given us, you know, it changes the perspective. And yeah, what does being a good steward mean to you? Like, how would you, what practical tips or what practical ways would you say is a way, what way mm, how can you be a good steward? Like, how would you tell people that, just basic things that could help you be a good steward?
yeah. So I feel like notoriously, especially in the church, we find a lot of people who are notoriously like inherent just terrible at being good steward, because one, we have prosperity gospel on one hand, we have the I have so much faith on the other hand, but people kind of lack the in between of actually taking care of what you have, and so people will go and blow every tab on whatever, what have you, and then come to the church and they're like, "Oh, can you help me out?" And we're over here taking up offerings just to help this person out when we know, you know, they actually earned money and they could have done right with the money that they had. Instead, now we're asking, for a handout. And then we also have the, especially Black church, turn around 3 times, jump up and yell, "Jesus bless you," kind of, mentality also. And it's like, somewhere in between all of that is the point where, okay, God's blessed you with a job. He's blessed you with the ability to, the money that you get, to be responsible with it. So what does being responsible look like? It looks like, doing what the Bible says first, bringing all your first fruits, and people, I feel like, have gotten confused with like taking the words of the Bible and how they used to, and what currency for them. So like back in the day, it was barter trade. So they brought like pigeons and olive oil and all that stuff. That was their currency back
Right.
then. And so now when people are reading the Bible and they need to read, oh, take your flour and your oil and stuff, the currency of that time, and just replace it with money, because that's all it is. That is
Mm-hmm.
the oil, the flour, um, that stuff, that was currency back then. And today's currency is actually money. So giving the 10% to God's house, and not being one of those people that's like, they don't do they don't do right with my money, so I ain't giving my money to them. Da, 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 da. Like, it's high time for people to stop using that excuse, because there are so many churches out here that are ethical and actually doing God's work with the money that's given to the church. And so, for anybody who's still on that, well, they don't, church don't do right, and they ain't nothing but a bunch of frauds. Like, no, high time for you to stop that. Go find another church. Just go,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
hop off of that. But giving your first fruits, and then with the money left over, taking care of your household, because additionally, um, as the Bible says, like, your household, like your family, that's first ministry. So while you are taking care of the ministry that's serving you and serving the greater community, you also need to take care of your household. And what does taking care of your household look like? Making sure your bills are paid, you know, making sure that you have food to eat and all of that good stuff. And then also making sure you have put to the side. The Book of Proverbs is one of my favorite books of the Bible, because it talks about, saving up for a rainy day, and only fools squander everything that they have away. Like, don't be a fool and squander everything that you have away. Take care of what you need to take care of, and then put some away. One of the best books that I've ever read, and it's a little, it's old timey because it's translated into like today's English, what have you, is The Richest Man in Babylon.
Oh, I
It's
haven't read that one.
Yeah, it's a really great book, and it talks about how the guy started with like 10 shekels or whatever it is, and each time he got it, he put away one, and he put away another one, and then eventually over time, with consistency and just being faithful to putting away something, that one little thing that may have been just minuscule eventually adds up to so much, to so much money. And so
Mm-hmm.
being faithful in taking care of God's house, taking care of your house, and saving for a rainy day, so that when stuff happens like COVID, you won't be caught off guard. um, the I was actually going through this last night in the Book of Proverbs. Like I said, it's literally my favorite book of the Bible. Um,
I love that book too.
um, the poor is, the poor is a slave to the rich. Like, the rich rules over the poor, because if you're poor and you have no resources, like, what else can you do but sit back and wait on the rich to give you a handout? And that's really what a lot of people are doing right now, is waiting on the rich to give them a handout for them to be able to
Mm.
take care of their households. Like, granted, yeah, we have been in this pandemic a lot longer than anyone could have foreseen happening. But at the same time, it's like, God always makes a way for you to
Mm-hmm.
get money. But at the same time, it's like, be faithful with what you have, and do what you can to continue to take care of your household and make more, and keep saving, for a rainy day. And also, in between that, treat yourself. Like, God doesn't want you to just be out here eating beans and rice and not doing anything with your life. If you're constantly saving and putting things away, being a good steward, you'll be able to treat yourself, and you won't be scrolling through social media like, oh, these people have such great lives. How can they afford to do all this? It's not because these people just make a bunch of money. It's just because they were good stewards with what they have, that enabled them to go on this trip, or
Mm-hmm.
buy that fancy pair of shoes, or whatever. So
Yeah, and that you, when you're talking about faithfulness, what keeps coming to my mind is the story of the master that went on this trip and left,
I
you know.
love I love
Yeah, he left some, he left talents to his servants, right? I'm sure many of people that are listening either right now or the replay, they might be familiar with this story, which is when the lord of the house, he went on a trip and he left talents to three of his servants. And talents, sometimes we listen at this story and we just assume that talents are just gifts, right? We learned that lesson thinking about our talents, like I'm good at drawing, I'm good at teaching and things like that. But in Bible times, one talent was worth, I think, like $1 million today. So he left, I think, 5 talents to one servant, 3 to the other, and 1 to the third. Am I correct? Correct me if I'm wrong, because like I said, I don't know all of the stories to the T, but I have the general gist of it. Um, so the the interesting thing though that says in the Bible is that he gives to each according to their own capabilities.
Yeah.
And sometimes, we complain about what we receive. Oh, why have I received this little? Why have I not received as much as, my other sister over there? But I think it's good to have this awareness as well that sometimes God gives us according to our capabilities. I'm sure that if God had given me, for example, before I started trying to I started doing things the right way, if God had given me a higher salary, I would have had access to even greater credit, and I would have gotten into a even greater debt that, maybe I would not have been able to get out of that situation. So it's this concept of faithful in little, faithful in plenty. Maybe what you have is actually what you need for you to be able to really learn to be in control of it, because more might be too much for you to handle, right? And practice that faithful in little, faithful in plenty. And the story goes along and those continues with that. He even says that, when the Lord came back, turns out that the one that he gave five, that guy multiplied it. So he called him good and faithful servant. To the second as well, the second servant, he was able to duplicate the amount. He called him good and faithful servant. And to the third, he said, I didn't do anything. I was scared. I hid it in the ground. And to him, he said, like, you're lazy. And he took what that third servant had and he gave it to the one that was good with that resource. So just practice that faithful in little, faithful in plenty. With what you have, learn how to do as best as you can. Get the financial education you need. I mean, if you think about it, these stewards, they knew how to invest their money, they knew how to double it. They had financial literacy. So educate yourself, start putting these things into practice. And honestly, what I have experienced and what I have seen is that as you do that and as you align your steps and your heart managing your money with what God is teaching you and inviting him and having this awareness like you're describing, um, doors start opening, and he does start giving more. Now, let's not do it with that motivation, but it's just an encouragement that, of his faithfulness.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up that story because I absolutely love it. And I love the part also where you highlighted is where the Bible says he gave each one according to their ability. Because God knows what you can handle. And it's proof in our everyday life. We see these ball players, we see these lottery winners who have all of this money and they retire from playing ball and with years they're broke. Or people who win the lottery, they typically end up in a worse off financial condition after winning the money than they did before they were in it. They did not have the capability to handle that such like large sum of money. And so instead of in everybody thinks money is their issue. Right? Everybody's like, oh, if I just had more money, I would be able to do this, that, and the third. And it's like, no, you don't have more money because God knows if you had more money, you wouldn't do right anyway because you're not doing right by what you have now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one thing to be putting your money in something that is bettering you, and it's another thing to be squandering your money away on brunch and shoes and clothes and like, oh, I need more money. If I had more money, then I'd be able to pay my like, no, it doesn't
Right.
make it doesn't work that way. So being faithful with and having that mindset. But I also believe that a lot of believers are like the servant who only had the one, and they get money anxiety because it's like, oh, I only have this little bit, so I need to go and put it over here and not, be a little bit risky with it or whatever, so I can keep like this one. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, even if you are scared of the stock market, even, a bank account pays interest. You don't go hide. I know a lot of people, like Black people, notoriously have grandmas who get under the mattress and stuff like that. And it's like, that's not a place for your money because at the end of the day, inflation will eat it away.
Hmm.
At least
Yeah.
if it in the bank, you're getting some kind of interest. It might not be keeping up with inflation, but you're getting some kind of interest on your money, and it would be making more, of course, if you went and invested in something you believe in, whether that's real estate, whether that's a stock market, whether that's investing in yourself so that you can make more money. Um,
Hmm.
and have a better your own life so you can better somebody else's life. Making smart decisions with what you have will always lead to more. And there's also another verse, somewhere in Proverbs, that says like riches are the result of wisdom, and it's like getting that wisdom of how to handle your finance and how to be a good steward. Like the result of that is, what you see people have today. So, people like to envy what other people have, but they don't know what it took for them to get.
Hmm.
Like being smart, being wise is, you're seeing the result of that. They made wise decisions. So,
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. Also, when God told Solomon, like, ask me whatever you want, I will give it to you. King Solomon asked for wisdom, and then he ended up being the richest man alive. So I'm all for wisdom. That's why I also love the book of Proverbs, because it's the book of wisdom.
yes. And so because wisdom is referred to in the feminine form. So, as women, especially, I know it's notoriously, oh, men handle all the finances, but I feel like as women, because wisdom is referred to in the form, a it is also, I feel like, a woman's duty to be wise in this area, and not just be the person who takes a back seat to financial decisions and financial, and at their household. Because women, wife or not, God called to be the keeper of the home, and part of keeping the home is managing the finance, being wise
Exactly.
and making
Exactly.
sense. So
I love that you're saying that. I love that you're mentioning that, because I truly believe the same thing. I really believe that we are, just because many of us are the managers of the household. I mean, we need to take that title. And a manager also looks after the finances of whatever he is managing or she is managing, right? And I also believe that there's just this different level of, I don't know, power when a woman is managing the finances. I do agree with what you're saying, that we just have, I don't know why, if it's how we're wired, but I do think that when women take control of the finances, when they're on top of those things, it's just even better. It's just even better. um what came to my head, what, as you were talking, was, one was that women, we have influence, right? The was the wise woman builds her house up, and
mhm,
the foolish one with her own hands tears it apart, right? That also includes the finances, right?
yeah,
If we should not, we should really try to be wise also when it comes to finances, because if not, with our own hands we can tear things apart. And the second thing that came to my head as you were talking as well is the Proverbs 31 woman. The Proverbs 31 woman, it says, she calculates the cost of a field and then buys it.
mm,
She's dealing with the money. She is, she's calculating it.
right, and
And says that her husband, her husband's heart trusts in her. Like he has full trust in her, and I think that's what we should all be, and strive to be, right? To be this Proverbs 31 woman in every single area. In the Proverbs 31 woman, she knew about her finances, and her husband trusted in her. And like you said, either you're single or married, same. It just applies. It's a lifestyle and a way of living. I completely agree with what you're saying. I'm so
yeah,
happy that you mentioned that particular women side.
yeah. I'm honestly, the Proverbs 31 woman was the original boss chick. Like she got into dealings that were profitable. She sold whatever she had, on merch afar. She had things going. She examined the field. She purchased it. This woman she had her hand a little bit in everything. The house was taken care of, but she also made she was bringing in money to her house. And for me, that lets me know, like, a woman alone person. a man alone should not be the only person managing the finances, but a woman should be heavily involved in that. And funny thing is that if you go and look at statistics, even in the financial world, women, it's proven that women are money managers overall than men are. And
Really?
women actually tend to make their clients more money than men, money managers and financial advisors do.
That's so cool. I didn't know that. Well, that just proves to show. See, we're so powerful. That is so cool. Um, anyways, I think we're what time is it? This 7:15. We have a couple more minutes to keep discussing this, but I'm really happy that you brought the subject of women in particular and finances. So not just God and finances, but also women managing your finances with God. I think that is very cool that you talked about that. Um, Now, the last thing that I have here that I wanted to discuss is does God frown upon building wealth?
I don't.
What are your thoughts of that?
Um, my thoughts on that are that the one scripture I hear it all the time. It's like the Lord gives you to get wealth. So why would He frown upon something that He's literally giving you the power to do? It's not that everybody's going to be wealthy. It's not that everybody's going to be out here being a business owner and being a millionaire.
Mhm,
Because that's just everybody's calling. But for the
mhm,
one, I think He's given the desire to be that, and to be the person who is the high earner, but is also feeling doing and making things for other people, those who he called to be leaders. He doesn't frown on wealth building, because wealth is a result of being a steward, and God wants you to be a good steward, and being a good steward will ultimately result in you being wealthy, not
mhm,
just in money, monetary forms. Wealth is also in the fruits of the spirit, being wealthy in love, being wealthy in joy, being wealthy in peace. And you don't have to be a millionaire to have peace in your home. You can literally be financially comfortable with
mhm,
knowing your bills are paid, you have extra, you can take a nice want to, you can go buy a boat if you want to because you're comfortable. Um,
mhm,
and so wealth building isn't this, like far off and and people look at reference scripture of, it's here for a pastor or I have a needle, then for a rich man to get into heaven. And so people just frown upon wealth. And it's like you are really taking this completely out because it's all about your heart condition. Yes, you can be rich and wicked, but you can also be wealthy and wise and
mhm,
um and in right standing with God because He's given you the ability to do that. Like all of these gifts and talents that He gives you are all for you to help build, the kingdom. And if the result of that, of you using your talents in the way that God has caused you to use them, is um, having more money in the bank than probably others, or maybe other people in your family, then that's just
mhm,
the result of it. And what you learn from being a good steward with that, you go back and you teach to somebody else so that they can be a good steward. And everybody can build wealth because I personally think we are all enabled. Like we all have the ability to get wealth, but it's also tied back to stewardship. It's like, God has given you plenty of space and opportunity. Like everybody has potential. Have how people like to say, "Oh, everybody has the same chance to be great with their lives. Some just choose not to be." When it comes to money, granted, there are of course like disparities in who gets paid whatever, what have you. Um, but at the same time, you can't rest on your disadvantage. Being disadvantaged is not an excuse for being a terrible steward over what you have and just being mad. It's like, oh well, because I gave her $100 and he only gave me 50, I'm just gonna go over here and because
right.
that's not fair. It's like, no, that's not an excuse. Um, this is not a tit for tat thing. God's not going to tit for tat with you. But what you should be doing is, yeah, even though that man might be making 120,000, you might only be making 90. But that doesn't mean that you can't be a good steward over what you have, because at the end of the day, you can be a millionaire and still be broke. And people, I feel like, have not understood the concept of, you got a lot of money, how could you be broke? Because when you get a lot of money, you think you can pay for everything, and then you end up paying for everything, and you don't have a lot. So you can be a millionaire and you can still be broke. So even just taking the little of what you have, but being consistent about being steward over it, is what will help you build wealth, in the long term. And that's in everything, you know. So just being a good steward over what you have, and God will ultimately, shine His face upon that. He is not adverse to you building wealth and building His kingdom and building up other people. And whoever says that is needs to go back and read their Bible, in my opinion.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Thank you for sharing that. That's so true, and that's something that I really wanted to for people to understand. God does not frown upon building wealth, and like you say, wealth is a result of good stewardship. And something that I was talking with a friend yesterday, was that actually the day before yesterday, was that also wealth is subjective as well. Like you were saying, you can be wealthy in love, and at the same time, when it comes to wealth, talking about money, it's also subjective. There's different levels. Like what wealth means to me might be different to what it means to my neighbor, right? Their perspective, their idea of wealth is different. So it's subjective, and God does not frown upon it. And I don't know if it's coming from tradition, misunderstanding, that we have this idea that He frowns upon it and He doesn't agree. I think honestly, it's probably a lie from the enemy, just to keep you in a way with you secluding an area of your life to God, rather than having full openness and transparency, and just being 100% you, and feel that confidence that that you can invite God into 100% of your life, every single area. I think, kind of like when in a relationship, right, of a husband and a wife, if there's like this one little secret that you have from your partner, it's like it's breaking that trust, it's breaking that relationship. And I think there's this misconception it can do that, and just understand that it's not true. Like you said, if you think that, then you have to read your Bible, because that's not what the Bible says. So anyways, thank you so much, Kayla, for joining. I really, really appreciate everything that you've shared today. I loved all of the things that you shared. I'm super excited about everything, honestly. I've had some notes. I know actually we've actually even gone off a little bit of the script, but that's okay. That's even better. Because the things that we touched, I think are even better than what we had planned. And that's how God is, right? We have
Absolutely.
plans, and He just
Man,
starts moving around.
yeah. So glad that you invited me to do this with you. I think it's valuable for people to kind of, get a better understanding. And honestly, this is a topic that could literally probably go on forever, because there's so many misconceptions and so many misunderstandings from the past, and when, you know, people weren't financially literate. And honestly, the Bible is the one book that's taken out of context in so many different ways. Um, so honestly, it's important to read it and get an understanding and a revelation of it for yourself, besides,
Yeah.
taking somebody else's word for it. One thing my dad always used to tell us as kids, it was like, he would always tell us when we were acting up, he was like, I'm not going to hell for you, and you're not going to get into heaven because of me. So you have to you have to eventually grow up and read for yourself and get an understanding for yourself. If you don't understand what you're reading, then ask somebody and get some help, and they can help lead you, on the right path. But it is definitely time for the subject of money to stop being so taboo, especially with people who consider themselves as Christians, because being less than, seen as, the person who doesn't have a lot, whatever, that's not an excuse. Um, it doesn't give you a one-way ticket to heaven because you decide to live in poverty. That's not. I feel like that's not God's design for anyone's life. And, why live your potential? Because, as we talked about, God gives you power to get well. So it's time for people to stop living beneath their potential.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much, Kayla. So do you want to share a little bit of your services or what maybe your program to people listening? It will stay recorded here, or where can they find you?
Oh, yeah. So I don't even know where my name really shows up on the screen. I can't see it here, but you can Instagram. You can book a call with me. Also, if you click the link in my bio, and we can discuss how I can help you with transforming your money mindset so you can cultivate the curve. I don't think people should enter relationships with people for coaching services because they feel like, oh, I need to get right because I just know that that's the right thing to do. Like, reach out to somebody to get help with your money because you know that the cost of not reaching out to them is far greater than the cost that you want. So, be serious when you're reaching out to myself or even Vivian about getting, help with your finances and managing your emotional triggers or just learning how to just manage your money better in general. And you can live the life that you desire. So, yeah, you can click the link, you can follow me, you can get on my email list, you can book a call with me, all that good stuff. Happy to help.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kayla. And thank you everyone who joined either the live or the replay. If you have any questions, just type them down. We're here to help in any way that we can. And yeah, we'll see you soon. And that is all for today. Bye. Thank you so much.
Thanks.